Welcome back, ladies and gents. On today's show, California wants to cancel engines, VW reveals the ID.4, and Audi shows off a special R8 that isn't that special. Plus, an open diffs about what the Rimac Bugatti partnership would mean. I'm Tiffany Stone, and this is Hagerty's Daily Driver. Let's buckle up. Yesterday, California Governor Gavin Newsom issued an executive order that would require all new cars sold in California after 2035 to be zero-emission vehicles. The announcement said, quote, "The transportation sector is responsible for more than half of all of California's carbon pollution, 80% of smog-forming pollution, and 95% of toxic diesel emissions." This announcement comes on the heels of California's largest fire season yet, which saw over 2 million acres burn. Now, California isn't the only one that's given traditional engines their walking papers. The UK was planning to ban fossil fuel vehicles around 2040, but is making plans to make the deadline 10 years sooner. That would put the UK on the same schedule as Ireland, the Netherlands, and Germany. So, enjoy those AMG burbles while you can. As the world heads to an EV future, Volkswagen is hoping they have one you'd like to buy. They revealed their first long-range electric car, a small crossover called the ID.4. Honestly, who names these cars? Now, the 5-door has a 210 horsepower electric motor mounted between the rear wheels, making it kind of this cool cyborg Beetle. If you're thinking, doesn't VW already make an electric car? The answer is yes. The e-Golf. Great car, but the official EPA range of only 126 miles probably turned off a lot of potential customers. As for the ID's range, VW says it will have an EPA certified 250 miles. A base model will run you around $35,000, but comes standard with some nice things like heated seats and voice control. If you want the all-wheel drive Pro model, it starts around $43,000. But that also puts it in the Tesla Model Y territory, a car that already has more power and range than the Volkswagen. Bold move, VW. We'll see how that pans out. Switching gears. Since 2012, the Audi R8 has won the overall at the 24-hour of Nurburgring 5 times. And to pay tribute to those victories, Audi is releasing this, the Audi R8 Green Hell Edition. Quick fact here, Jackie Stewart gave the Nürburgring the nickname the Green Hell. I mean, come on. It's a 12.9-mile roller coaster where the runoff is grass, Armco, and trees. Oh, and it rains there, and sometimes snows at the same time. So the name kind of makes sense. You guys agree with me? Now, Audi gave this R8 a special green paint job, but you can get it in other colors, which I wouldn't recommend. Other aesthetic changes include matte black trim pieces, diffusers, and special 20-inch wheels. Inside, it looks like someone sneezed Alcantara, contrasting stitching, and special floor mats. But that's where the specialness ends. Underneath, it's still a standard Audi R8 performance. You still get the same 611 horsepower, 5.2-liter V10, and of course, brilliant handling. But if you were hoping for some special race car bits, you're out of luck. Now, production is limited to 50 units, with prices starting around $273,000. Coming up, what if the rumors around Rimac taking over Bugatti are true? What will that mean to Bugatti, to Rimac, to Volkswagen? Hagerty's Eric Weiner and Kyle Connor of Out of Spec Motoring talk about it in Open Diffs. But first.
What time is it?
I don't know.
Time to unpimp the auto. Oh, snap.
Thanks, Tiffany. My name's Eric Weiner. I'm executive editor at Hagerty, and we are here with Kyle Connor from Out of Spec, and here to talk about the merger that seems to be coming up between Rimac and Bugatti. Kyle, what do you think about this? Pretty big news.
It's huge news. It's super interesting. You know, everyone wants a piece of Rimac right now. It'll be really amazing to see your thoughts on what they do with Bugatti, and then, of course, I'll chime in with a little bit of the technical details.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty exciting time for even the highest end car companies to really be pivoting their priorities toward electric technology. And that's kind of the core reason why VW Group is making this decision. They're sort of moving on from what they've already mastered, which is internal combustion engine, and they're clearly embracing electric technology and the potential for that technology to trickle down into higher volume products as they hope to kind of accelerate zero emission vehicles. And in that respect, Bugatti is sort of the poster child for conspicuous consumption with, quad turbo 16-cylinder engines. So it makes sense for them to sort of part ways with that side of the business in some capacity and try to reinvest those resources in EVs. Do you think they can kind of pivot and make that sort of technology exciting?
Yeah, well, look, Rimac has as far as I believe, the best electric technology in the hypercar space. They're not even developing technology just for their own cars, but many others. So it'll be cool to see what they end up doing with the Bugatti name. Do you think we're going to end up seeing the Rimac technology end up inside of Bugatti products branded as electric Bugattis?
I think so. I think that's the only way. And that's kind of what I think Rimac gets out of this is although they have, by most people's measure, some of the best EV technology out there and certainly on the cutting edge, they don't have brand recognition. The company doesn't mean anything to the average person, but when somebody hears Bugatti, they think, multi-million-dollar, crazy expensive car. And, that's a huge advantage. And it's an opportunity to make that sort of electric technology and put it in a package that extremely wealthy people will want to be a part of. But what do you think it is that kind of makes Rimac sort of the golden child of the EV world right now? I mean, in the US, we very much look to Tesla in that way, but in Europe, it seems like, at least from a supply standpoint, Rimac has really taken on that role.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Rimac really has a fantastic reputation across all OEMs for really pushing technology very far. And it's what they are. They're a relatively small team. I think they're only about 600-700 people, something like this. And they are known throughout the industry. I've spoken with some friends that are engineers for some big OEMs in Germany, and they always lust to work for Rimac because their team is incredibly focused, very much driven on pushing technology as hard as possible. I would almost compare them to the Lucid of the US, not so much the Tesla.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so what they have really right now is, they've released their Rimac Concept 1. Now they're working on their C2. But what I find more interesting is a lot of the deep technical stuff, such as their inverter technology, their battery management systems. What they're able to do is have one battery management board, just as an example of what they're capable of. And this board can measure a pack's voltage, et cetera, across the whole thing, from a 6-volt system architecture to a 1,000-volt system architecture. So their area for expanding is crazy. They make everything from wheelchair batteries to hypercar batteries and electric bikes. It's pretty amazing. So yeah, it's really, I think, their engineering team that people see the value in. It's their work ethic. It's their background of knowledge. They have an old VP from Tesla going in there that's really pushing things as well. I think they're hitting all the nails on the head, and Volkswagen Group will benefit, especially through Porsche having a big share of this.
Yeah, right now Porsche has, I think, a 15.5% share, and they're talking about increasing that share to 49%, which would, give them not total control because they'd be increasing their share and then selling it to Rimac, but they would still have enough say on the board to be able to influence the company and be able to benefit from its technology. I know Rimac also has the Concept 2 platform. The C2 platform is sort of bouncing around and is going to be the basis for the Pininfarina Battista supercar. I'd be interested to see what you think about whether it's not just the battery technology or the inverter technology, but also some of the platform stuff, which could, benefit a company like Bugatti down the road.
Right. Well, the thing that Rimac has going for them is it's not just a battery supplier in this case. They certainly pull their batteries from wherever, but they also will do ADAS. They're really pushing things with driver assistance systems, full vehicle architectures, UI. They seem to have the full package. And the nice thing is everything that they make works really nicely together. It's kind of like Apple. You get the app that works with that screen that does this. And for a company like Pininfarina, they don't want to go to 38 software providers to figure out how to merge everything together. You just want to go to the best because you're building the best car, and that's going to look beautiful in their case. And that's where you go. And that's, I think, why it's going to be a successful partnership there, but also why we see Jag, Aston Martin, Magna, all these suppliers investing heavily in Rimac. And like you had said at the beginning of the call, they are the golden child of the automotive industry right now, and especially for Europe. I think they're doing a great job. It'll be cool to see what happens with this Pininfarina-based car.
Yeah, and on the Bugatti side, I'm wondering what the range might be in a vehicle like this. It seems like if Bugatti's going to make this decision, they're going to go full EV. There's going to be no hybrid side to it. But the use case for an EV with a huge price tag and a Bugatti brand on it, the range to me doesn't seem like it would be such a huge deal. I mean, the kind of people who own these vehicles are not really concerned about needing it to do everything. I had the privilege to be able to drive a Bugatti Chiron several years ago, and I was talking to Andy Wallace, who's the factory test driver, and he was telling me some crazy stuff about the people who actually own these vehicles. They own like 10 different properties on average, 50 some cars, like 3.1 helicopters or something like that. So, if this thing can go 300 miles an hour, but it can only go 150 miles, it seems like it's not that big of a deal. But from the overall business perspective of having Rimac, connected with the Volkswagen Group family, it seems like for the volume cars like the ID.4, which was announced today, having the benefit of their technology sort of within reach could pay huge dividends.
And that's exactly where it comes down to. I'll hit on your first point, which is range. Right now, I think C2, they're targeting around 400 miles of range. You have a super low coefficient of drag. You have a big battery pack. And the nice thing with electric motors, unlike internal combustion engines, is typically the more power they make doesn't really compromise its efficiency. Basically, you can have an electric motor as long as it's easy to spin. It produces X number of energy. When you floor it, it'll output a ton, but it doesn't affect its natural state. So that's cool. The other side of it is what VW Group is going to get out of this. We just saw the ID.4 release today. Amazing car, really good price point. They're doing a great job there. But the thing to keep in mind, I think Porsche is really going to benefit because the Taycan is about the best EV you can make by buying everything off the shelf. Without doing real in-house design from the ground up and engineering. I mean, of course they did a lot, but if you look at Bugatti's headquarters, for example, which I think is interesting to see if Rimac will utilize it, it's just on the German border, but inside France in Molsheim or something like this.
Molsheim, yeah.
But it's only 150 kilometers or a 2-hour drive to Weissach, which is where Porsche's engineering is. So this is interesting. However, most Bugatti engineers are in Wolfsburg. I'm not sure what's going to happen with them. But yeah, Volkswagen Group has a lot to gain in this whole thing. Rimac, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but my perception of this, if they're going to have this much control from Volkswagen Audi Group, there's a ton of bureaucracy and levels of organizations and VPs of headlight illumination output, like just annoying titles that, right now Rimac's free to do whatever they want. Why would they want this much control of their company?
Yeah, and I'm wondering that too. It's kind of a strange thing to think about. The only thing that I can really put together is, if they want to pivot their business in some way, maybe to become more of like a supplier and really to become a de facto supplier across the industry, they probably feel like they need to get a seat at the big boy table and not just be sort of orbiting on the fringes of it. And this would allow them to be, with one of the world's largest automakers. And the company is clearly serious about pushing things in this direction. I mean, there are rumors of, since Ferdinand Piëch's departure, of huge shakeups at Volkswagen Group, talking about, intense deliberation over what to do with Bugatti, what to do with Lamborghini, what to do with Bentley. So I think these sorts of big moves won't be that uncommon going down the road. I think it's very possible to see big shakeups at one of the world's largest automakers. And for Rimac to be able to sort of get a seat at the table amidst that would be one reason I could see they would want to sacrifice some control.
Yeah, I totally agree with this because right now we've seen Volkswagen go extremely heavy into electric mobility, more so than BMW Group or Daimler.
Way more.
I don't know what's going to happen with those guys because they're so far behind with technology, manufacturing, cell production. Look at EQC. They made like 10 of them and they can't get enough batteries. So I don't know what's going on over there. Volkswagen's done, I think, the best job of all the Germans. And for Rimac to be able to recognize that in this particular case, potentially be able to sell their technology into every VW EV that hits the road, that's where I could see that partnership working quite well. And then on the other hand, for the Rimac produced vehicles themselves or their technology, they could stuff their technology into a Chiron or the next generation Bugatti, sell it through their sales network, their brand cachet. You know that every Bugatti they make, they sell. So I guess why not leverage that?
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that they make that everyone they sell. It's because there's a huge investment just to get that brand back off the ground. And it's only in relatively recent years that it's actually been profitable. They've been able to basically take the same platform and rework it, carefully to be able to offer, sportier versions like the Per Sport and variants like the Devo to actually be able to, make this reasonably profitable, which at those, costs and the, the price for customers is kind of unbelievable. But eventually they're going to have to change. I mean, the Chiron is itself kind of an evolution of the Veyron, and it seems like whatever they're planning on doing to make this an electric car company that focuses on high output EV performance, they're going to have to totally rethink what this brand represents from a technology perspective. But I think from a kind of marketing and sort of from a symbolic perspective, it still will be the crown jewel, on the top of the pile. Because
Bugattis have always been about specs. It's always, it can go this fast for this long. And, I always remember the spec, like it could just like gobble its full tank of fuel in like 12 miles or something like that. It doesn't even matter if it's good specs. It's just big numbers. And the thing right now, if you want big numbers, it's got to be electric. Rimac has this amazing 2-speed transmission for their rear motors. For their quad motors, the fronts are on a single fixed gear. The rears are on a 2-speed transmission, similar to Taycan. There's a lot of benefits for that for top speed. So, I don't think Bugatti's ever been about the intricacies of the character of the W16. It's never been that fun. It's just driving a big honking engine back there and you floor it, and it's all about the wow. And with an electric car, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have experienced Tesla acceleration and Ludicrous. Like you get wow when you do that.
Yeah.
So I think actually the electric powertrain fits Bugatti better than any of the internal combustion plants. What's your thoughts on that?
I think you're bang on. I mean, there's no question that the ability to claim top speed records and be able to have wild acceleration and pretty quick gas consumption it's all part of the appeal of something that is not within reach of mere mortals. But that being said, when I drove the Chiron, I was kind of blown away by how civilized it was. I mean, it is, you're having a $3 million car that isn't yours. There is a little bit of anxiety there, but it's actually very easy to control. You can see reasonably well out of it as long as you're not trying to look behind you. And it's easy to place. The lane changes are, pretty fluid. It's not uncontrollable as far as acceleration. And, it excites you, but it doesn't scare the crap out of you unless you're, absolutely at the absolute max. And, with that, in that respect, I think you're totally right. I think an EV suits it. You'll get that thrum of the electric motors, which probably in practice won't feel or sound all that different from the experience you get when inside the car. The sound insulation in the Chiron is so amazing that really all you kind of can hear from the inside are the turbos. I mean, you hear the 4 turbos kind of hissing and spooling, and that's kind of the predominant noise. From the outside of the car, obviously you hear more of the exhaust and intake and that kind of stuff. But no, I mean, I think it's a really, really suitable platform for this brand. Obviously, you get the trick acceleration, and I think a lot of people really enjoy it. I think we were lucky to have a quad turbo W16 for as long as we did. And it's pretty clear that Volkswagen recognizes, especially in light of them trying to put Dieselgate and all that kind of stuff behind them, that they are ready to turn around and pivot in a way that BMW certainly and Mercedes have not been able to do so deliberately and so cleanly.
Yeah, I agree. So basically, we break this down into two categories. We see, what does Bugatti as a company gain by going to Rimac, which is certainly going to be a lot of technology, battery pack. Basically, Rimac will design a battery that fits either into the existing Chiron platform, which is probably the least expensive thing to do, or to take one of their prototype platforms and build an EV off of that, sell it to the Bugatti customers. What Volkswagen Group gets, I would say, is arguably way more important than what Rimac gets, although Rimac will also be able to sell their technology. But you have the next generation Taycan is going to be so much more condensed. It's going to be lighter. You're going to have all of this new technology that's really a holistic approach to building an EV, not just taking a part from Bosch and this one from Continental and this one from Magna, and then paying 9 different software organizations to make it work, sort of. Like, I'm driving an e-tron this week, Volkswagen ID Group car, and it said, do you want me to look for gas stations? I'm like, no, I need electric charging stations. So this is where the Rimac influence will really be able to help Volkswagen Group. I think it's really a win-win all around. I mean, I'm pretty pro on this whole thing. I don't think it's a huge loss for Bugatti to go electric at all. If anything, it's going to be better to be in a freer environment, to let that brand expand.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. It feels like a natural evolution, although it's kind of surprising to see a smaller company do such a big deal, with such a big name brand on the table. It makes sense when you start to actually look at it. But I am curious in the way you are about, what Rimac really stands to gain on this, because it's clear that from a technology perspective and from an integration perspective, like a holistic integration perspective, like you're talking about, there's a ton of European car companies that are clearly keyed in on Rimac. Like, they have some secret sauce. But yeah, I think it legitimizes them to have a partnership like this, probably gives them access to some stuff, suppliers, resources, research, technology that they might not have as immediate access to. And I think if they want to do something with their own brand of cars, they could have an increased access to marketing, dealer networks, all the kind of stuff that is harder to do if you're a relatively small company in Croatia compared to, a titan of the industry in Wolfsburg.
Yeah, so my final thoughts on this really are, I really hope Volkswagen doesn't choke and constrain Rimac to building things with their technology. Like Taycan, for example, should have had cylindrical cells, but because VW had the agreements already, they used prismatic cells. And so let's hope that bureaucracy doesn't transfer to Rimac. I bet their engineers are a little bit worried about this because they do operate so freely. On the other hand, Volkswagen Group stands to gain a ton of knowledge, technology, and a hardworking engineering team that can really help them integrate from software to battery pack architecture to BMS to inverters. And look at ID.4. They need the help. That thing was delayed for months just sitting around in parking lots because of poor software. So lot to gain from VW. My side, not sure what Rimac gains really, but I think it's all pretty positive.
Thanks so much, Kyle. Appreciate the time.
Thanks for all of that, Eric and Kyle. Definitely seems like a match made in heaven. But that's all for this week. Be sure to tune in next week. Everyone stay safe, and as always, keep driving.